Floyd! Floyd! I'll knock you out! He's sick, look at him.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. It turns out the rumors were true. According to Chris McKenna, Jessica McCaskill versus Lauren Price is in the works for April 20th in Cardiff. It would be a unified title fight if all gets signed off.
Oh, wait a minute. That's not how I heard it.
Veteran boxing scribe Jake Donovan says he's told McCaskill will likely have to give up her WBC title, barring any ruling that would forgive her not going through with the ordered mandatory fight against Ivana Habazin, which is currently scheduled for the same date in Croatia. Ring WBA titles are still in play.
That's how I heard it.
We talked about in my previous video that in order for all of this to go down, Jessica's got to surrender the WBC title to Ivana Habazin, at which point Ivana can look to unify it with Natasha Jonas, this division's IBF champion, or voluntarily defend it against Michaela Mayer for a nice payday, which we talked about.
They both beat her.
If the WBC title goes to Ivana Habazin and she ends up opposite the ring, either one of those two fighters, they both beat her. They both do. Roll on, McCaskill versus Price.
It's very early in Lauren Price's career to be fighting someone as seasoned, someone as experienced as Jessica McCaskill, but she does seem to be catching her at the right time, at the tail end of Jessica's boxing career. She doesn't look it, but she's getting close to 40.
Last in action opposite the ring, WBO champion Sandy Ryan, a fight that most people thought Sandy won, but a fight that was scored a draw.
That was on the Matchroom side of things.
This fight's gonna be on Boxer that's invested in Lauren Price, the Olympian, the gold medalist.
The unbeaten up-and-comer.
What does Lauren Price have to do to win this fight?
What?
What does Jessica McCaskill have to do to win this fight? Well, what Jessica really has to do is stay in character.
Yeah.
Stay who she is.
Yeah.
Stay who she's been. That aggressive, unorthodox, quite messy, rough and rugged pressure fighter. That's what she's got to do because Lauren's not used to that. She's not had enough time, had the opportunity to come up against a fighter like Jessica McCaskill.
Often criticized for her wild and frenzied style.
It's worked for her. It worked for her against Erica Farias. It worked for her against Anaí Sanchez. It worked for her against Cecilia Brækhus, against what were far more experienced fighters than she was, decorated fighters too. It's worked for Jessica. It's not always pretty, but it works.
Applying so much pressure on the other girl, so fast, so often, hitting them with so much.
They don't have time to think, and before you know it, they're flustered, they're overwhelmed, and Jessica gets to fight her fight. So if the question is, what does Jessica McCaskill have to do to win this fight and stay champion? She's got to stay in character. The caveat is, can she at this age?
What's she, 38 years old?
Jessica, being an aggressive volume puncher, isn't as reliant on speed and reflexes as some other base styles. It's not. But when you lose a step, you lose a step. And it looked like she lost a step in the Chantel Cameron fight, which she lost. She looks to have lost a step in the Sandy Ryan fight, which most people think she should have lost.
She's slowing down.
And even if she's not as reliant on time, reflexes, and speed,
She's slowing down.
what she has to try to do is try to overwhelm Lauren with volume, with activity. Don't give her time to think or room to breathe.
That's what she's got to do.
What does Lauren have to do? Lauren Price. Lauren is best described as an athlete.
Yes.
Very athletic fighter, light on her feet, good foot speed, good hand speed combinations. She's sharp.
Not big on power, though.
As stated, I think Jessica's a harder puncher than Lauren is, but what does Lauren have to do to win this thing? Play at the angles, create space, get punches off.
Give herself enough room to work, because if Jessica has it her way, she's going to come busting through the front door, collapse the pocket.
Lauren's got to move her feet. She's got to move around. Create space and keep a bit of distance to get punches out.
Don't just stand there.
It's a thin line, a very thin line, between creating space to set traps, creating space to get out punches, and retreating. You don't want to spend too much time moving away from the pocket, moving away from the action, because then it starts to look like you're getting bullied, like you're getting pushed around.
Create space to get out your punches.
Don't kid yourself. There are moments when Lauren's going to have to be the one stepping into her punches. There are moments where she's the one that's going to need to back off Jessica. Step in, rip some combinations, put her on her back foot.
This is what Lauren has to do.
Manage the distance, keep a bit of space, and don't just sell out whenever Jessica wants you to sell out. Don't just trade with her.
Fight the fight on your terms.
Jessica throws very wide punches, big looping shots, so Lauren Price, she's got to keep that chin tuck, hunkered down, slight crouch to weave under those big looping shots.
And if it seems like Lauren Price's keys to victory require a lot more strategy, it's because they do.
To beat a pressure fighter usually requires a bit of strategy, unless you plan on fighting fire with fire and you think you can beat that pressure fighter at their own game.
Lauren doesn't have the firepower to do that. What she does have is speed, reflexes, and athleticism.
That's what she can use to beat Jessica. Work around her. Because you're faster, because you're younger.
Because her approach is a lot more simple than yours.
I'm leaning towards the youth, the speed, the mobility of Lauren Price in tandem with her being the house fighter.
She's the one boxers invested in.
Price on points is the pick. Men's bantamweight news. Former 4-division champion Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez is moving up to bantamweight.
Things got quiet there for Chocolatito for a while after he lost the trilogy to Juan Francisco Estrada. He sat out all of last year.
I thought he might retire for a while there. Looked like he was going to. Now, future Hall of Famer Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, a 4-division world champion, has a new weight class. His last fight was in 2022. A majority decision loss to Juan Francisco Estrada. Since then, not much news has surfaced from Gonzalez's camp. Gonzalez was in Santa Ynez, California, in support of Tom Loeffler's 360 Promotions, exclusively spoke the boxing scene, and confirmed his next fight will take place at bantamweight, a division he's never won a title in. There is nothing concrete, but I will have a fight at 118 pounds, but no opponent yet, Gonzalez said via a translator. Gonzalez achieved incredible feats when he was at super flyweight, who ascended to the #1 position on the pound-for-pound list. He got HBO main event features when flyweights struggled to get TV time in the United States, and he boxed on historic cards alongside Gennady Golovkin when they were both viewed as the two best fighters in the world. The move up in weight would signal another historic feat, as the 36-year-old Gonzalez would look to become a 5-division world champion with a record of 51 wins and 4 losses and 41 wins by way of knockout. He hopes to further add to his legacy.
At 36 years old, I don't imagine it's all that easy for him to get down to 115. He's already been there a long while.
One of the best inside fighters, mid-range to inside fighters and volume punchers the sport has ever seen. That's how good Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez is, an offensive whirlwind. But when he moved up to super flyweight, when he moved up to what was his 4th weight class, you started to see him struggle. He started to look more human, because as you move up in weight,
you lose something.
You're fighting bigger fighters than you normally fight, that are accustomed to taking a bigger punch than the punch you normally give. They're more durable. He's 2-2 in his last 4 fights. Both losses were to Juan Francisco Estrada via split decision and a majority decision. Both are also debated by boxing fans as they were close fights. Gonzalez has not fought since December 3rd of 2022, but he's back in the gym. The exact next move, Gonzalez simply said, I'm still waiting.
He's a pressure fighter.
Often dismissed by casual boxing fans, American boxing fans, who either don't watch the lighter weights or think that because he doesn't spend the entire 3 minutes of a round or spend the entire fight on his bicycle, that he's no good. It actually takes more defensive prowess to stay in the pocket, roll and ride punches and slip punches while getting off punches, than staying so far on the outside it's hardly a fight.
That's not defense.
Because what are you defending yourself against? You're so far on the outside, you're not fighting. A separate matter, being an inside fighter like Chocolatito, it has its drawbacks, because as you move up in weight,
everything has drawbacks.
It's going to be harder to land with authority, and it's going to be harder to back off those bigger guys as you're barreling forward, boxing on the inside. At bantamweight, Takuma Inoue of Japan holds the WBA title. Junto Nakatani, he's got the WBC. Puerto Rico's own Emmanuel Rodriguez, he's got the IBF, and Australia's own Jason Maloney, he's got the WBO.
The Junto Nakatani fight, that would be the most dangerous fight for Chocolatito.
I don't get the sense he's going after that guy. He might be looking at Takuma's WBA title or Emmanuel's IBF, Jason Maloney's WBO. Are these winnable fights?
They're more winnable than the Junto Nakatani fight.
Before it comes to that, Chocolatito's going to have a tune-up fight. He's going to need to shake off the ring rust before he tries to fight one of these champions.
Some are more beatable than others.
But that's the risk you take on when you try to become a champion at 5 weights.
Can he do it?
It really does depend on whose belt he's fighting for. In men's super bantamweight news, the Japanese Boxing Commission have lifted Luis Nery's ban from fighting in the country ahead of an imminent announcement for his bout with Naoya Inoue on May 6th at the Tokyo Dome. Neri was banned after he tested positive for Zilpaterol around his knockout win over long-reigning Japanese world champion Shinsuke Yamanaka, then came in massively overweight before winning the 2018 rematch by a second-round knockout.
This is a good fight.
With some backstory, seemingly revenge for the Japanese fight fans that watched in awe and horror as Luis Nery ranked blows down upon Shinsuke Yamanaka, then unbeaten.
He beat the fuck out of Shinsuke, then he did it again.
Now he's going back to Japan to face what is widely perceived as an even better fighter, a more dangerous puncher than Shinsuke, Naoya Inoue, dubbed the Monster.
Who I think is a bigger puncher, punch for punch, than Luis Nery. And Luis Nery, he can punch.
But I think Naoya Inoue cracks harder. The evidence of that is Luis Payano, a common opponent between them. Where Luis Nery needed 9 rounds to get rid of Payano, Naoya Inoue only needed 1.
Just one.
Is that a triangle theory?
No, I'm gauging their power. I'm gauging who punches harder.
If I believe that Naoya Inoue is going to dispatch Luis Nery, it's not because of the Payano fight, it's because of other factors, how the fighters fight.
Not just Payano.
But because they're both punchers, and if we're gauging who's the stronger puncher of the two, who's the faster, sharper puncher of the two, I'd say it's Inoue. And the Payano fight is evidence of that.
I think he's gonna knock out Luis.
Could be a body shot. I remember that's how Brandon Figueroa stopped him. That's how Brandon knocked him out. He caught him in between the punches with a well-placed body shot. Luis, he's a strong puncher, he's aggressive and dangerous in his own right, but he's no defensive wizard. He can be caught. We saw that in the Brandon Figueroa fight. We saw that in the Avzat Havanesian fight.
He gets hit.
And I think if you let Naoya Inoue land on you, how those guys landed on you, he's going to get you out of there. Thinking ahead, beyond that fight with Luis Nery, if Naoya Inoue stays undisputed champion, he could defend his crown against Australia's own Sam Goodman, his IBF mandatory challenger in Australia later on this year. Goodman's promoter, George Rose, has revealed that he is in talks with Inoue's U.S. promoter, Bob Arum, about this possibility. Inoue will first fight Luis Nery, the WBC's mandatory, then presumably move on to the IBF's.
What do we need to know about Sam Goodman?
He's got an unblemished record of 17 wins with no losses, no draws.
7 knockouts.
He became the IBF's mandatory challenger last year when he took on America's own Reese Aleem. Few familiar faces that he's fought. A former champion in TJ Doheny, an unbeaten up-and-comer in Reese Aleem.
And a world title challenger in Miguel Flores. That's the same Miguel Flores that shared the ring with Leo Santa Cruz over a year ago.
He fought Sam Goodman last year. Sam won a unanimous decision. Sam has been busy. He's a prolific fighter. He fought 4 times last year.
It's good.
And he's already got a fight on schedule for this one. Later on this month, on the 13th, against Mark Schliebs. He's not sitting on his hands waiting around for that Inoue fight. He's still keeping busy. This upcoming Mark Schliebs fight will be his 3rd fight since having become the IBF's mandatory challenger. He's not sitting on his hands. He's not playing it safe. He's getting out there, he's rolling the dice, and he's sharpening up. A good opponent for Naoya Inoue if he beats Luis Nery.
And if Sam beats Mark.
Sam Goodman, who's a bit statuesque for the weight, standing in at about 5'6", good physical dimensions for a super bantamweight. He's not a small guy, not for 122.
Just some things to think about ahead of what is supposed to be Inoue versus Neri. It may soon become about Inoue versus Goodman.
And finally, another look at some recent recommendations that Floyd Mayweather made for Terence Crawford and what could be Terence Crawford's next fight. He said, somebody's got to give Boots the opportunity. It's been difficult for Terence Crawford to get the Spence rematch done. It's been difficult to get the Canelo fight done. So his other option is to fight Boots Ennis.
Why didn't he mention Tim Tszyu?
Doesn't matter if he didn't. Terrence Crawford has already spoken to the WBO about potentially moving up in weight and challenging Tim for his WBO title at 154, which would in effect make Terrence a 4-division champion if he wins. A nice feather in his cap to cap off his career.
We've already talked about that.
When Floyd makes a recommendation like this one, what I see is a potential investment from the PBC in the career of Jaron Boots Ennis, even if it's not official on paper, not yet. Floyd is a highly egotistical and self-serving individual. He wouldn't have made a recommendation like this one if he didn't have skin in the game.
You're saying Boots is a PBC fighter?
I'm saying he could be very soon, and that's the only reason that Floyd is bringing him up. But that's not all. That's not the only recommendation Floyd made. Floyd Mayweather has suggested that Terrence Crawford versus David Benavidez should happen. If Crawford wants to go up to 168 and wants to fight Canelo so bad, and Benavidez wants to fight Canelo so bad, if they can't get Canelo, they can fight each other.
He's always making recommendations and suggestions that he would never act upon himself.
Because for telling me that Terrence should go up to 168 for David, why didn't you go to 160 for Gennady? You said he was basic. You said he was straight up and down. No bells and whistles. Why didn't you go in there and prove it? That would have been a big fight. Certainly bigger than an Andre Berto fight.
For telling us that Terrence should go up to 168 to fight David, why didn't your fighter, what was then your fighter, go to 140 for Josh Taylor?
Why didn't he go to 147 for Terrence Crawford for making these kinds of recommendations?
Why not?
The truth is that there are a lot of people that have an axe to grind with Terrence Crawford because he messed things up for them. What he did to Errol Spence Jr. reflects poorly on the PBC when Errol was supposed to be their big bad man, their big fish, their big welterweight that was manhandled by Terrence Crawford. And in the subsequent weeks and months that have followed, they've tried every excuse in the book to talk down Terrence Crawford,
downplay the victory.
They keep trying to sell us Jaron Boots Ennis as the anti-Crawford, this guy that struggled with Karen Chukatsian and his pivots.
Karen Chukatsian don't go 12 rounds with Terrence Crawford, but he did go 12 rounds with Jaron Ennis.
It's all an effort to take Terrence Crawford down a peg for what he did to Errol Spence Jr. and how that reflects on the PBC, that this is a fighter you guys were so obviously invested in, and he was so easily dismantled by Terrence Crawford.
Like all of your fighters, all of your second-rate fighters.
Your brand is a joke.
Look at these idiots cosplaying promoters.
What it reminds me of is the late 90s and early 2000s in the hip-hop industry, the music industry, how any 2-bit rapper with 16 bars was given a quote-unquote label.
Oh, look at you. You're the big boss now.
It's like giving a kid a play phone. These guys don't know what the fuck they're doing. That's why their fighters get beat so easily whenever they do step outside of their bubble.
Chino, Floyd said that he'd like to see Terrence fight Boots or fight David Benavidez.
He's holding out hope that Terrence gives Jaron Ennis an opportunity, like the opportunity he didn't give Keith Thurman, or the opportunity he didn't give Amir Khan.
No, what he wants him to do is roll the dice with David Benavidez, like he didn't roll the dice with Gennady Golovkin.
Pointless suggestion, since David Benavidez plans to move to light heavyweight anyway, and cruiserweight after that.
But it needs to be said.
Floyd's a fucking hypocrite. He's always making suggestions he would never act upon himself. And who the fuck is listening to him anyway?